My focus on the tape each morning is absolute. Not because I'm hunting for a quick score, but because I am conditioning my mind for the contest ahead. The market is impersonal. It has no regard for your necessities, your aspirations, or your theories. It is an arena where the disciplined prey upon the impulsive, where methodical patience overwhelms raw emotion, and where your greatest adversary is not a bear market or a bull market. It is the voice inside your own mind, whispering hopes and fears that have no basis in fact. I paid dearly for this knowledge, more times than I care to recount, and each lesson cost me a fortune. But through that financial devastation, I discovered a fundamental truth. Success in speculation is not about discovering the perfect chart formation or the next wonder stock. It is about the dialogue you have with yourself in the quiet moments before the opening bell, before the fray begins. Every morning, before the tape begins to run, I stand and face myself. I speak truth, not hollow affirmations that sound pleasant but lack substance. I speak the hard truths, the kind that pierce the fog of greed and fear. I state that my purpose is to align with the market, not to forecast its movements. You see, the average man comes to the market with his mind already made up. He has fallen for his own analysis of yesterday's action, committed himself to an opinion, and believes he has deciphered some hidden code. That is not speculation. That is gambling with a thesaurus. The tape owes no man an explanation. It cares nothing for your meticulous research or your powerful intuition. The market simply is. Your task is to perceive its reality without the distorting lens of your own ego. I tell myself, my capital is my lifeline, and I cannot operate without it. Every dollar in your account is an instrument of your craft. Would a field marshal commit all his forces to a single frontal assault against an unknown adversary? Yet speculators do this daily. They spot a formation that looks promising and risk their entire line on one play, one idea, one fleeting moment. I have been wiped out 3 times in my life. 3 times I built a substantial fortune from nothing, and 3 times I lost it all. And each and every time, it was because I abandoned this core principle. Preservation of capital must always precede the pursuit of profit. You cannot make money if you have no money to make it with. My primary duty each morning is not to make a profit, but to avoid making a foolish, irreversible mistake. I will wait for my pitch. This is perhaps the most critical discipline I enforce. The wisdom is borrowed from baseball, though I was never a man for the diamond. In baseball, the batter can afford to wait for the one pitch that is perfectly in his sweet spot. In the market, you possess the very same advantage. Yet speculators behave as though inactivity is a crime. They see movement and feel an irresistible urge to act. They hear of others profiting and are consumed by the panic of being left behind. But the market is a constant stream of opportunity. It is always there. The great swings, the ones that build a fortune, do not appear every day or even every week. They materialize when the conditions are perfect, when the trend is unmistakable, when the line of least resistance is so clearly defined that to not take the trade would be the greater error. Until that moment, my job is to observe, to wait, to remain liquid and ready. Jesse Livermore, or Larry Livingston as he was known in print, consistently stressed that Wall Street extracts a heavy cost of instruction for every lesson learned the hard way. Fortunately, the core principles he developed to survive these expensive market penalties were captured for posterity by Edwin Lefebvre in the 1923 masterpiece, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. It stands as the finest possible literary training ground, allowing you to absorb decades of painful operational experience without ever having to risk $1 of your own capital. To ensure this timeless wisdom translates accurately to the modern computerized arena, we advise seeking out the Max Davidson Annotated edition. Davidson's careful commentary is indispensable for bridging the gap between Livermore's era and ours. A link to this essential edition is provided in the description below. I remind myself every morning the trend is my trusted guide. Not hope, not pride, not the desire for vindication, only the trend. When I study the tape, I am not trying to outthink it or guess where it will pivot. I'm trying to understand what the tape is registering at this very moment. Is capital flowing into this name or out of it? Are the buyers assertive or are they timid? Is the price making a series of higher highs and higher lows, or is it merely churning without direction? The market speaks a plain language to those who will listen without bias. But most men do not listen, they argue. The tape registers a downward pressure, yet they insist on buying, arguing with an undeniable fact. The tape shows strength, yet they declare it's overextended and sell it short. This is the speculator's ego pitted against the market's reality, and reality is always undefeated. Every morning I pledge my humility before the tape. I will not force my opinion on the market. I will identify where the market's own intention is clearly stated, and I will move in harmony with it. I trade patterns, not companies. This is essential. The moment you become infatuated with a company, believing its story makes it special, you are no longer a speculator. You have become an investor with the dangerously short time horizon of a trader. I am indifferent as to whether the company is revolutionizing an industry or is led by geniuses. My focus is on one thing only. Is the stock acting right? Is it displaying strength while the general market is weak? Is it retaining its gains when others are giving them up? Is it a leader or a laggard? The narrative behind a stock can be captivating, but the price and volume action reveals the unvarnished truth of what the intelligent money is actually doing. And the intelligent money, the professionals, the institutions, the insiders, they possess information you do not. They always have and they always will. So rather than attempt to be cleverer than they are, I simply observe where they are placing their capital and follow the patterns of accumulation, markup, and distribution. These patterns recur endlessly because they are born of human nature, which itself never changes. Every morning I also declare, my emotions are not my counsel. Hope and fear are the twin enemies of the speculator, and they will lead you to ruin if you allow them to take control. Fear will compel you to snatch a pittance when a fortune is on the table, taking a small profit just as a major move is beginning. Hope will seduce you into nursing a losing position, praying for a recovery that will never come, or adding to a winning trade recklessly long after the primary move is complete. Both emotions whisper deceptions that sound like prudence. Fear says, secure your profit now, play it safe, when you ought to be letting your profits run. Hope says, add more, it's destined to go higher, when you ought to be protecting your gains. I have learned that the moments I feel the most confident, the most certain, the most euphoric, those are the moments of greatest danger. It is then that I must slow down, step back, and ask, am I adhering to my principles, or am I succumbing to impulse? My principles were forged in the calm reflection of past experiences. My emotional self, in the heat of the moment, is the least qualified version of me to be making decisions. I will honor my stops. This is an unbreakable rule. Yet it is the one most speculators violate. Why? Because to honor a stop is to admit an error in judgment. It is to accept a loss. It is to concede that your analysis or timing was flawed. No one enjoys being wrong. But in speculation, being wrong is an unavoidable part of the business. The most successful speculators in the world are wrong 40, even 50% of the time. Their success lies not in the frequency of being right, but in their discipline to cut losses short while allowing their profitable trades to grow. For every trade I enter, I know the exact point at which the premise is proven wrong. And when the price reaches that point, I exit, without debate, without negotiation, without hope. Because I know one thing with utter certainty. The market can remain irrational longer than I can remain solvent. Holding on and hoping has destroyed more fortunes than any crash in history. Each morning I repeat these declarations not just once, but over and over, letting them seep into my subconscious. I am programming my mind for success, much like an aviator reviews a pre-flight checklist. It is not thrilling, it is not glamorous, but it is effective. Because when the market opens and the action is fast and furious, when stocks are gapping and the crowd is reacting with raw emotion, you will not have the luxury of time to think your way to a correct decision. You will revert to your training, to the mental habits you have ingrained. If you have spent your mornings reinforcing discipline, patience, and respect for the facts of the tape, those are the qualities that will guide you under pressure. But if you have spent your mornings dreaming of profits and searching for hot tips, it is that impulsive behavior that will emerge. The journey from a losing speculator to a winning one is not about finding a better indicator or a more complex system. It is about becoming a different man. A man who can observe capital appear on his ledger without elation and disappear without distress. A man who greets a string of profits and a string of losses with the same emotional equanimity. A man who measures his success not by the day's final tally, but by his faithful execution of a sound process. Because here is the secret that cost me years and millions to truly comprehend. If you execute your process with unwavering consistency, the profits will eventually take care of themselves. The market rewards discipline over time. It ruthlessly penalizes emotion and inconsistency. There are no exceptions to this law, regardless of your intelligence or your effort. People ask what distinguishes the professional from the amateur. It is not intellect, it is not work ethic, and it is not even the size of one's capital. It is the ability to be comfortable with uncertainty. The amateur demands a sure thing. He needs to believe a trade will be profitable before he enters. The professional understands that every trade is a matter of probability, nothing more. He is content to make his play when the odds are in his favor, accepting that any single instance may result in a loss, but knowing that a disciplined approach to the probabilities will yield a profit over time. The amateur feels the itch to be in the market. Sitting on the sidelines with cash feels like a waste, a missed opportunity. The professional knows that cash is a strategic position, often the most advantageous one, and that patient observation is frequently the highest yielding activity he can engage in. The amateur trades for the feeling, the excitement, the validation, the thrill. The professional trades to make money, and he has learned that feelings and profits are rarely found in the same place. What you say to yourself in those quiet morning hours, before the world's noise intrudes, before the market opens, before your emotions are stirred, that is what shapes your destiny. Because trading is not really about stocks and bonds. The market is merely the arena where your internal state is rendered in dollars and cents. If you lack discipline in your personal life, you will lack discipline in your trading. If you are impulsive in your dealings with others, you will be impulsive with your entries and exits. If you are not honest with yourself about your own shortcomings, the market will expose them for you without mercy. This is why speculation is the most expensive form of education one can pursue. The market will teach you everything about yourself you have sought to avoid, and it will charge you tuition in the form of losses until the lessons are learned. Let me describe the morning I lost everything for the third time. I awoke that day feeling infallible. I was on a winning streak, my account had swelled, and I had convinced myself that I had finally solved the puzzle of the market. I dismissed my morning discipline. I did not recite my principles. I did not remind myself of the very rules that had brought me to that point. I simply opened my quotation board and began hunting for action, filled with a confidence that bordered on sheer arrogance. By the week's end, my account was a memory. Not because the market had changed, not because my methods were suddenly faulty, but because I had changed. I had ceased to be the disciplined speculator who built that fortune and reverted to the reckless gambler who had lost the previous two. That agony, that humiliation, that crushing weight of self-inflicted failure, that is when I truly grasped the power of the morning ritual. Since that day, I have not missed a single morning. Even when I am not trading, when the markets are closed, when I am traveling or unwell or distracted, I stand before myself and speak these truths. Because I know that discipline is not a quality you possess. It is an action you perform every single day without fail. The instant you believe you have mastered the game, the moment you think you are beyond the fundamentals, that is the precise moment you have begun your descent. The market has humbled far greater men than I, and it will humble you too if you provide the opening. Your morning practice is your armor. It is your defense against your own worst tendencies. I also tell myself each morning, I will not trade to get even. This may be the most difficult rule of all, as it demands you suppress one of the most primal human urges, the need for retribution. When you take a loss, particularly a painful one, every fiber of your being screams to jump back in and reclaim that money immediately. Your ego is bruised. You feel compelled to prove the market wrong and yourself right. But trading from a need for revenge is a direct path to financial ruin. It is trading from a state of emotional injury, not from sound analysis. It is forcing a play that does not exist because of a psychological need, not because the market is presenting a genuine opportunity. I have watched men destroy in a matter of hours what took them years to accumulate, all because they could not accept a single loss and move on. Every morning I commit to accepting losses as a simple cost of doing business, as unavoidable as brokerage commissions. And I pledge to myself that I will never, ever allow my wounded ego to jeopardize my capital. I will build my line, not bet it all at once. This is a lesson paid for with scar tissue. Early in my career, upon identifying what I believed to be a prime opportunity, I would commit my entire capital at once. Sometimes I was right, and the profits were swift and large. More often, I was simply early. The opportunity was valid, but my timing was off by days or even weeks. And having committed my full line, I had no reserves to add to the position when it finally began to move, or to average my cost at more favorable prices. Worse, when I was wrong, I was catastrophically wrong, with my entire account shackled to a failing position. Now every morning I reinforce the principle of entering positions gradually. I test the market with a small initial probe, adding to my line only as the market's action confirms my judgment. This method means I rarely capture the absolute bottom or top of a move. But it ensures I survive the times when I am wrong. And in this business, survival is the prerequisite for all success. I am in competition with no one but the man I was yesterday. The game of comparison is poison in this field. You will see another man boast of a great victory on social media and feel you are falling behind. You will hear a story of a friend who made a fortune and feel inadequate. But speculation is not a race against others. It is a battle against your own weaknesses. The only question that matters is this: am I a better speculator today than I was yesterday? Am I more disciplined, more patient, more consistent? Am I repeating old mistakes, or have I learned from them? When I focus on this internal contest instead of measuring myself against others, I find both tranquility and progress. Another man's success or failure has no bearing on my own. We are all playing different games with different capital, different methods, different temperaments, and different objectives. The only opponent I must defeat is the version of me who allows emotion to overrule judgment, who lets greed compromise risk management, who permits ego to deny reality. These morning declarations are not incantations. They will not magically transform a losing trade into a winner. They will not grant you clairvoyant insight into the market's next move. Their function is far more valuable. They prepare your mind for the intense psychological pressure of speculation. They bring to the forefront the principles you already know but are apt to forget in the heat of battle. They cultivate a mental state conducive to sound judgment rather than one of emotional reaction. Over time, they change who you are at a core level. You become the sort of person who adheres to his rules, even when it is difficult, who remains calm while others are panicking, who perceives opportunity where others see only chaos. I want to be perfectly clear. This morning practice will not make trading easy. Nothing will. The purpose of the market is to transfer wealth from the many to the few, and it is ruthlessly efficient at its job. What this practice does is give you a fighting chance. It places you in the small minority who approach this endeavor with the seriousness and discipline it demands. Most people treat the market like a casino, a hobby, something to be trifled with in their spare time. Those people provide the profits for the professionals. They are the fuel that makes the engine run. They are a necessary part of the ecosystem, but you do not want to be one of them. Every morning I also make this commitment. I will continue to learn. The moment you believe you know all there is to know about the market is the moment you have guaranteed your ultimate demise. The market is in a constant state of flux. Technology changes. New participants arrive with different motives. Regulations are altered. Economic landscapes are transformed. A method that worked last year may fail this year. A pattern that was reliable this morning may be obsolete by this afternoon. I read incessantly, not only about markets, but about psychology, history, and human nature. I study my own trades, keeping a detailed log not just of the trade itself, but of my reasoning and my emotional state at the time. I analyze my successes to understand what was done correctly, and I dissect my failures to extract the lesson. This devotion to continuous improvement is not optional for the serious speculator. It is the price of remaining in the game. I will not confuse a bull market with genius. This is perhaps the most humbling principle, and it is most vital during prosperous times. When the entire market is rising, when nearly every trade you make is profitable, it is dangerously easy to believe you have mastered this craft. It is easy to increase your position size, to take greater risks, to become aggressive. But a rising tide lifts all ships, both the sound and the unseaworthy. You have not necessarily become a better speculator. You have merely been fortunate to be operating in a favorable environment. I have witnessed countless men build fortunes in bull markets, only to give it all back and more when the tide turned. They mistook being in the right place at the right time for genuine skill. They failed to realize their success was a product of the environment, not their own ability. When the environment shifted, their true level of competence was laid bare. Every morning I remind myself to remain humble, to acknowledge that much of my success is due to my alignment with powerful forces I do not control, and to be ever prepared for the day those forces change direction. The greatest operational advantage I possess over the average speculator is not my experience, though that is valuable. It is not my capital, though that provides a buffer. It is my willingness to do nothing when there is nothing to do. Most speculators are addicted to action. They believe they must always be in a trade to be a trader. They cannot sit in cash without feeling anxious, as if they are wasting precious time. But the most profitable trades of my career were all preceded by long periods of patient waiting, of observing, of refusing to be drawn into indecisive, choppy markets. When the market is in a state of confusion, when there is no discernible trend, when prices are being whipped about without clear purpose, the correct action is to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Preserve your capital, conserve your mental and emotional energy, and wait for clarity. The market itself will signal when the time is right to act. It will present a clear trend, a clean breakout, an unmistakable pattern of accumulation. Until that signal is given, sitting in cash is not idleness. It is the most profitable position you can take. Here is what I have learned about losses, and it is something I remind myself of without fail. A loss is information. When I take a loss, I am not failing. I am learning. I am discovering where the market does not want to go. I am receiving direct feedback that my analysis was flawed or my timing was premature. A loss, when managed correctly, is one of the most valuable pieces of intelligence you can receive, for it tells you something true about the present market conditions. The only speculators who never lose are the ones who never trade. Everyone else in the arena sustains losses regularly. The difference is that the professional loses small amounts and makes large profits, while the amateur does the exact opposite. He allows small losses to become devastating ones through hope and denial, and he cuts his large potential profits short through fear and impatience. I tell myself every morning that my ego is not my partner in this business. The ego demands to be right. It wants to prove its intelligence, its insight, its superiority. But the market is entirely indifferent to such things. The only thing that matters is the bottom line on your ledger. And the ego will cost you money far more often than it will make you money. When I am wrong, I must admit it instantly and close the position. When I am right, I must remain humble and recognize that a measure of luck was likely involved. The ego wants me to hold a losing trade to avoid admitting a mistake. The ego wants me to add to a losing position to prove my initial judgment was correct. The ego wants me to boast about my winners and conceal my losers. I have learned to recognize the voice of my ego and to do precisely the opposite of what it commands. This is not a natural act. It requires constant vigilance and deliberate practice, which is why it is a cornerstone of my morning routine. So, develop your own morning practice. Stand before yourself with unflinching honesty and speak these truths until they become your default operating system. Remind yourself that you are here to follow the market, not to lead it. That preserving your capital is the foundation of all future success. That patience is rewarded and impulsiveness is punished. That the trend is the only reliable guide you have. That patterns are more truthful than stories. That your emotions are ancient survival instincts unfit for modern markets and must be managed, not obeyed. That your stops are inviolable. That you are competing only against your own frailties. That your education must never cease. That a loss is a lesson. That your ego is not your ally. Do this every morning, without exception, and you will begin to notice a profound shift. Over time, you will require the reminders less, because these principles will have transformed from something you must remember to do into the very person you are. The greatest reward the market has ever given me is not the money, though I have made fortunes, lost them, and made them again. It is the gift of self-mastery, or at least the unending pursuit of it. Every day the market provides immediate, unvarnished feedback on the quality of my thinking and the strength of my discipline. There is no one else to blame and no one else to credit. This pure, unadulterated accountability has forced me to become better, not just as a speculator, but as a man. It has forced me to confront my weaknesses, to build systems to overcome my limitations, to evolve. And I know this with absolute certainty after decades in this arena. That same opportunity is available to you. The market does not care about your background, your education, or your social standing. It asks only one question. Can you master yourself? Every morning as you speak these truths, you are doing more than just preparing for the trading day. You are declaring your refusal to be average, your refusal to let your emotions squander your capital, your refusal to quit when the path is difficult. You are joining a small fraternity of individuals throughout history who understood that the road to external success leads directly through internal mastery. The market will test you. It will lure you with the promise of easy money that vanishes when chased. It will try to frighten you away from real opportunities with volatility and noise. It will punish your arrogance and reward your humility. And through it all, the only thing you have genuine control over is your response. Not what the market does, but what you do in reaction to it. That is where the battle is won or lost, in that space between the stimulus of the tape and your response. In that moment of choice between discipline and impulse, between patience and action, between process and outcome. This morning practice is my legacy to you, earned through pain, failure, and years of costly lessons. I share it because I remember the feeling of being broke, confused and overwhelmed by the market's complexity and my own emotional turmoil. I remember the desperation of wanting to succeed but not knowing how, of possessing the ambition but not the discipline. If that is where you find yourself now, understand this. You can change. You can become the speculator you need to be. But it does not begin with a new system, a hot tip, or a better indicator. It begins with who you are when you rise each morning and what you tell yourself before the battle commences. The words you speak to yourself in those quiet moments are the foundation upon which everything else is built. They are the difference between a professional and a gambler, between a career and a catastrophe, between the person you are and the person you are capable of becoming. Say them with conviction, mean them, live them. And when you fail, because you will fail, we all do, say them again the next morning and the morning after, and the morning after that. Because success in this business is not about achieving perfection. It is about persistence. It is about recovering from losses, maintaining discipline during winning streaks, staying humble when you are right, and remaining composed when you are wrong. If you have found value in what I have shared, I ask you to do something. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these morning declarations resonates with you most powerfully, or share your own personal discipline if you have one. Let us build a community of serious students of the market who are dedicated to mastering this craft. And be sure to watch the other videos on this channel, where we delve deeper into specific methods, market timing, and the psychology of operating at the highest level. This is not entertainment. This is your education. This is your transformation from amateur to professional. The market is waiting, and it is entirely indifferent to your fate. But I am not. I have walked this path, paid the tuition, and learned the lessons. Now I am offering them to you. What you do with them is your decision. Say these words every morning. Mean them. Live them and watch as your trading and your life is transformed. The person you are today is not the person you must be to succeed in this endeavor. Begin building that person tomorrow morning, and every morning thereafter. Your future self, the successful speculator you are destined to become, is waiting for you to show up and do the work.